everybody. Welcome to my April TBR or April reading plans. This is a fairly short list, and honestly, some of these books are carryover books or crossover books from March into April, and I'm going to keep it still short because I'm reading these at a fairly slow pace, and some of them are quite long. So, the first crossover book to talk about is The Crossing. What an appropriate title, right? So, this is by Cormac McCarthy, and this is book two in the Border trilogy. I'm buddy reading this with my friend Jimmy from the Fantasy Network, and we're reading it at the very slow, manageable pace of 10 pages a day. So it may take a while. We are barely at the halfway point, I think, or just past it. And it's very difficult to talk about this book. Honestly, I feel like if I start talking about it, I'll probably reveal more than you probably want to know going into it. And so I want to wait until I finish the book before I can compile some concise thoughts about it. But it is unrelated to book one in a way. I mean, I think there's a thematic connection, but this takes place in the 1930s in New Mexico and Mexico, and we follow a young boy named Billy, and that is all I'll say for now. I'm often asked where to start with McCarthy, and honestly, I'm not the McCarthy expert. I'm only 3.5 books into my McCarthy journey thus far, but I recommend asking Jimmy that question since he's read several more McCarthy books than I have. And I know a lot of people start with The Road or have read The Road. I have not read The Road yet, and I feel like that's probably the place to start, I'm assuming, and I need to read that at some point. But I'll just say that I am really enjoying my McCarthy journey so far, and the 10 pages a day really works for me with this author. So, what's interesting is that another crossover book I'm reading is a different buddy read, and it has crossing in the title as well, and that is Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. And so I'm buddy reading this with Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And this particular book is also kind of a Western. I guess this might be considered Western. So in Butcher's Crossing, we're following a young boy in the 1870s, if I'm not mistaken about that timeline. And this young boy has left Harvard University to go out west to Kansas to Buffalo country where there's a lot of buffalo hunters. And he's just basically on a wanderlust mission to learn about life through experience rather than learning about it through lectures at school or being preached at in church. And so this is by John Williams, and Stoner by John Williams was my favorite read of 2022. So I love the way John Williams writes. And it's interesting too because, as I mentioned, this is similar in a way, though different than The Crossing. Obviously, different timeline, different location, but there are some similarities, I guess, in that we're following, a boy on a journey kind of thing. But it's interesting because McCarthy and Williams, their writing styles could not be more different than one another. And I thoroughly love both of them for their prose. So I just love the way John Williams writes, and I love the way McCarthy writes. And it's interesting to compare and contrast the two authors. So maybe I'll talk about that later on in my wrap up when I finish one or two of these books. But I'm very excited to be reading this book by John Williams. I know that Alan and I are lamenting the fact that we both loved Stoner and Augustus. For Alan, Augustus was his favorite read of 2022, and I loved that book as well. But we're both lamenting the fact that there's not much more that's been published by this author, and he's passed on. So it's pretty sad because what a gifted writer. What a gifted writer John Williams is. So anyway, it's going to be fun to buddy read that, and I am listening to the audiobook. I do want to pick up a physical copy as well of Butcher's Crossing, and we're going through that very slowly alongside each other. And so I'm excited about that. Another book that I am reading right now that's a crossover book between March and April is A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin, book 3 in A Song of Ice and Fire. And this is for our A Song of Ice and Fire read/reread along for 2023. And I'm so thrilled to be reading this book or rereading this book because I really loved all 5 books when I read them over a decade ago. But my goodness, like every time I pick one of these up again, I I have a new appreciation for what Martin does as a fantasy writer. Now that I've read more fantasy, I can recognize some of his talent in a different way. So that has been a ton of fun so far. I don't even know how far I am into the book. I'm reading this on ebook, the illustrated edition on ebook, but I don't know how far I am because I have that feature turned on where you can't see the page number or a percentage. So I check it now and then, but I'm just trying to just be present with the story because it's wonderful. But it is a long book. It's over 1,000 pages, which is why I started early. But the live show for that will be on Alex's channel from Tall Guy Reads at the end of April. So I need to be ready for that. So I imagine that's going to take me most of April, though, honestly, because it is so long. Uh, and that's why this TBR is so short. But another book that I would love to get to if time allows is going to be The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie, because I read Age of Madness book one in the month of March, A Little Hatred, which I'll talk more at length about in my wrap up. But I was so entertained with that book. Every single page, every POV, everything going on. And so I need to continue that journey. And I am immersion reading this with audio with Stephen Pacey's amazing narration. And yeah, I'm excited to get to this. And that might mean putting off another trilogy I wanted to start this year, the Live Ship Traders trilogy. So I did want to get to that early on in the year. And my friend Matt from Matt on Books, my grimoire friend, he is going to be hosting, he is hosting a Realm of the Elderlings read along right now. And they are starting Live Ship Traders in the month of April. And I really wanted to hop on board for that, but I just don't think I can manage that with everything else going on. So that might have to wait a little bit longer for me, but I'm very excited to get to it. And if you do want to pick up Live Ship Traders and you want to find some friends to talk to about it, I'm sure that Matt would be more than happy to have you on board. So please consider joining the Grimoire Discord and finding that thread. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for him to be rereading that. I think that's a reread for Matt. And I would love to get to that, but that will probably only happen if some miracle of time opens up for me in the month of April, because I feel like this is already kind of, this is pretty consumable for me, but I don't want to push it. And the other book I might be starting at the end of April is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And this will go into May. I'm in a read along of this for May. Some friends invited me to read this alongside them. And those friends include Alex from Tall Guy Reads, and Kyle from Read by Kyle, and Scott the Bald Booktuber, and RJ Gibson. And so I really want to take my time with that too, because I didn't realize until recently that that is a pretty lengthy book. And so I need to get that book for one thing, but I think I'm going to start at the end of April if time allows for that too. So that's it for my TBR for April, and we'll see how I do. If I can get to some of these other books I wanted to get to at the end of the month, we'll see. Of course, I'll update you all in my mid-month update. But in the meantime, please let me know in the comment section below what you're reading, what you're planning to read in April, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.